think. I'm ready. Well, welcome to the X Podcast. So good to be together today. Everybody that's tuning in, whether Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube, I would love to know what everyone's favorite way to tune in is from. And by the way, I didn't know this. We have people, we're international. So not that calling us a big deal, but it's kind of a big. I'm just kidding. But we got people. We are international. We got people not only in the church and across the state and across the country tuning in. It's really cool to see the family growing. But Panama, UK, and South Africa, we got our family expanding. So we'd love to know how you found out about us and what's speaking to you. As always, we'll say this at the end too, but we would love your help in getting the word out if you are finding these conversations meaningful and helpful to you, and 5 stars as always. But today's a really special day because we are switching roles a little bit, get to host, and my goal is always just to make you so proud. But I don't
know what to do with myself in this seat.
I don't either. So today we have, of course, Kevin, as usual, crew, and we have his better half, Andrea.
My much better half.
And to be honest, we're just going to have a conversation today and see where it goes. We thought coming out of Valentine's Day, it'd be nice, love's in the air. It'd be nice to have the couple here with us and talk through, you in past episodes have shared some of your story of anxiety and some of what your family's walked through in COVID. And so just thought it'd be fun to hang out. And so Andrea, just going to go ahead and put you on the spot.
Yeah.
For those that don't know you, give us a snapshot, a little bit of who you are.
Yeah, I've been going to this church for I think 11 years now. I am Kevin's wife. We have been together since we were freshmen in high school.
Wow,
that is so sweet.
Yeah, we're just high school
sweethearts.
We got 2 kids and another one coming. I'm ready for the third one to be here. I've been ready for a while now.
What's the due date?
April 10th.
Wow.
It'd be okay if she came a little earlier, though. We wouldn't be mad about that. I'm a nurse, a hospice nurse, and
But you're also in...
Oh, I'm in the Air Force National Guard, too. Just a side note.
So much. So you guys met freshman year.
Well, we met before that. We kind of grew up together. The first memory I have of Kevin was in 5th grade, I think, but I think we've known each other for longer than that, but that's kind of my first memory.
What was your first thought when you met him?
We were just in the same friend group at that time.
Her first
just
thought
friend,
was,
total
that's a
friend
really
zone.
chunky boy.
No.
Andrea's seen the best of me, the worst of me.
What was your first thought when you met her?
Wow, she's so pretty. I'm lucky. I got to marry my dream girl. You're so sweet. You're so pretty.
Stop.
I'm serious. Gosh,
Well,
I'm gonna have to cut this podcast short.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
glad you're
okay. So here's what we need to do then. I want to play just a really quick rapid fire favorites.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So you don't have time to think about it.
Okay.
The moment I'm going to name something, and you're going to tell me what his favorite of that is. All right.
His favorite?
What his favorite of that
Okay.
is.
Oh no.
So, all right. So Andrea, for Kevin, his favorite color,
Red?
his favorite season.
Actually, his favorite color is purple.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Why the podcast
Favorite
is purple.
season?
Yes.
Summer.
Summer. Okay. His favorite food?
And maybe pizza.
Maybe pizza. Okay. Is that true?
Kinda.
Or
All right.
sushi.
Okay,
Sushi.
we're gonna switch roles.
Good
All
day.
right, Kevin, I'm gonna ask you her favorite movie.
Oh, the Notebook.
Is
Is that right?
No.
It's not right.
No, it's not right. What is
No.
it?
Maybe Goodwill Hunting?
Oh, yeah.
Goodwill
yeah,
Hunting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What would be her favorite memory of you two?
Ouch.
Oh, I know what it is.
You do know what it is?
Mm-hmm. It's probably your favorite, too.
Really?
Yeah.
I know what it's not. What was it? What's your favorite memory of us?
What do you think it is?
I have no clue. Not a clue.
When I was gone for tech school in Texas for 4 months, and I got to come home for Christmas, and Kevin picked me up from the airport, and then we went to Harvest
So
Moon together.
sweet.
Yeah, we had. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
All right.
All right.
What's her favorite podcast?
Her favorite?
Mm-hmm.
She listens to The Grove, which is
The Grove.
Passion City
Passion
Church. They have
City
like a
Church.
women's ministry podcast.
Nice. Which one is her favorite kid of y'all's?
Jack is a mama's boy. Definitely Jack.
Okay.
Me and Mila are thick.
Sorry,
as
I just
thieves.
wanted to see if you'd say something, just like right off the top of your head. All right, last few. Beach or mountains?
Beach or mountains?
Oh, beach.
Beach. Okay. And what is her favorite gift that you've given her?
Oh, she's so easy to buy gifts for. I have no clue.
Andrea, what is it?
My favorite gift you've given me.
Here's the thing.
I'm really bad at
she
answering these kind of questions.
Yeah, we've been together for a long time.
I can tell you multiple.
Andrea she doesn't want for much, and like gifts. She like loves letters and things like that.
Or like he made me a calendar one time.
Yeah, I made her a calendar.
Meaningful gift giver. Okay.
She loves I made her a custom calendar. So she's
custom
a lot different
planner,
than me.
A coffee cup in 2016.
What did you guys do for Valentine's Day?
Valentine's Day, I think with the kids and with all the COVID stuff, we just tried to sneak away for a little. We tried to go out to eat. We got some sushi. That was fun.
But we also, in the afternoon after church, I took Jack and he took Mila separately, and we had
little Valentine's
McDonald's
Day lunch.
in the car
that's
with
awesome.
each of them. So that was fun.
Awesome. Well, let me just say publicly, you guys are one of my favorite couples.
Oh.
And y'all are amazing, and you make beautiful, adorable babies.
We try.
And I cannot wait to meet the third one. And one of the things that I know we've talked a whole lot about, which this is crazy. This is episode 18.
Yeah.
Wow. So not to give ourselves a pat on the back, but we've been committed every week in the last 18 weeks. We have put out an episode. And one of the cool things we've heard is not just that this has been inspiring and maybe thought-provoking as far as the conversations, but that it's given people a sense of community in what can be a really lonely year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know you have processed from your point of view what COVID's been like.
Yeah.
What COVID's been like from your perspective, but also as a father and a husband. And so, Andrea, I just want to hear a little bit from you, I don't know, take me back to maybe the first couple months of COVID hitting and what that's looked like from your perspective. I know for a while when everything first hit, you had to actually go away.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of go away.
Mm-hmm.
But what was that like as a mother, a spouse, walking through? What has this past year been like for you?
I feel like at the very beginning, I think I was in a little bit of denial. I didn't believe it was going to be a big deal. I didn't want it to be a big deal. Kevin was pretty sure that it was going to be a big thing, and I was like, Kevin, drama. It's going to be fine. And then it wasn't fine.
Yeah.
Well, to give people a context, too, at the time, you were working in the emergency room.
I was, yeah.
At Grant Hospital here in Columbus.
Wow. Yeah, I used to be an ER nurse, yeah.
Yeah, so you had a kind of a frontline view to everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And so you worked for that entire year in Grant Hospital night shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had a different perspective.
Yeah,
on
it was
things than I
it was
did.
weird at the beginning because the hospitals were empty because not everywhere, but here, because people were scared to come to the hospital. So there would be people calling like the emergency room clerk asking, saying like, "Oh, I'm having chest pain, but should I come to the hospital or should I not?"
Yeah.
People who should come were too scared to come. So, literally we were dead. Like there would be times that we were at downtown Columbus emergency room and there was 4 people.
Wow.
And when we're used to having 60 people there at a time. So that was just weird, but there was definitely a time that it changed and we started seeing the patients, and it was eye-opening for me to eventually get to that point. But I was for sure for a while, I didn't want to believe that it was going to be what it was.
Yeah.
So hunkering down and figuring out, I think as everybody did, what we thought was going to be a couple weeks.
Yeah.
14-day to slow the spread thing that we all, shut down the stay-at-home orders and everything shut down for a little bit. And then Andrea is also in the Air National Guard, and she is in the medical unit. I always get this wrong.
Yeah, it's like a medical detachment.
It's like an emergency medical
homeland
response or something like that.
Yeah.
So basically, her deal is when things like this happen.
Yeah.
Like her function in the military is emergency medical things.
We've never prepared for a pandemic before necessarily.
But if
but
there's
we prepare more so for any like health related anything that's going on in the United States is kind of what we trained for.
So you were in the ER, and then we got the call probably, I can't remember. So before you got the call that you were going to be activated, which we didn't know what that would look like when you got that call. It was very ambiguous. We had moved houses and started a renovation project on some 3,000 square foot house that we were really excited about. But,
out in the country.
Out in the country. It was a dream.
Yeah.
And then you got the call that you were activated as you're working night shift. We got a call that you were going to be activated on 30 days of military
I think
orders.
It was supposed to be 90 days at first. Yeah, and they called me and basically said, I didn't really know what this meant, but like COVID orders. We're activating our unit for COVID orders, and you need to be at training tomorrow, and we're leaving the next day. And of course, that's when having little kids, that's terrifying too. And it's what you sign up for, but you hope that that's never the case of something that's going to happen. Yeah. It ended up being not nearly as bad as that. We did a lot of those COVID testing in the nursing homes. That was kind of like the mission for a while. There's actually still people on orders doing things with that now.
And just thanks to all the, I've gotten a front row seat at people like you who are the front lines to, nursing home workers and nurses and people in the military, firefighters, first responders, people who are really on the front lines right now, teachers. I mean, a lot of people who are navigating these things. But I think really what was interesting for us was all of the unknowns of, we just didn't know what was around the corner.
Yeah, it just felt super out of control.
A lot of uncertainty.
We were out of control. Everyone was, really.
And you get in that survival mode.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really interesting learning experience for us, as I'm sure it has been with our listeners in so many ways. But, interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
So, you're in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
You got young kids. And you both have very active jobs that demand a lot. And then in the middle of all that, move not once, twice.
Yeah, we ended up moving out of that
end up
other
moving
house.
Twice. But then where I really want to go is I think if we've ever seen a year where people have been honest about their mental and emotional health, this is the year.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I know, okay, we've talked about this on this podcast, but which by the way, I'm still in awe. We've talked about this on the podcast that we went through this 21 days things as a church where we went through a fast. And at the end of that fast, we had a worship night. And at that worship night, you just shared a story that just brought the house down.
Yeah, it did.
And I think part of it is just because of who you are. Part of it's your story. Part of it is your heart and your story resonated, I think, with so many stories out there.
For sure.
And it's a story of you just being honest about your journey of anxiety.
Yeah.
Your journey of, not to skip ahead, but maybe through COVID, it highlighted that.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
intensified that. And so can you just walk us through as much as you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah.
And even if one of the cool things about you sharing the story as well was, from a faith perspective, it seemed like God orchestrated some really cool things behind the scenes to even make that happen, even answering some of your specific prayers. So can you walk us even through that night, but just your whole journey? What has led up to this?
Yeah. Well, I think depression and anxiety, like I shared during the worship night, something I've struggled with probably since I was a teenager. I can't remember exactly when it started. It looked different then than it looks now. But I've had like ups and down seasons of that for sure. I think when we first got married and I was pregnant with Jack, that was the first really bad, as far as depression goes, really bad season of that. But we kind of made that out on our own. We figured it out. But this year, I'm not sure. Maybe it was just the stress of just compiling of everything, the pressure of the pandemic and working in the emergency room, which that was a really great learning experience for me. But gonna shout out to all of all of my Grant Medical Center team. They're incredible, but the things that it's a high stress, high pressure job. And I'm thankful that I, got to learn from them, but, it wasn't for me long term. Yeah. And they're just got to a point that, just the stress of everything, the stress of moving and into this house that we, it was a dream for us, this big farmhouse that we were going to renovate. was so beautiful outside in the summertime. That renovation turned out to be a lot a lot bigger than we were anticipating for it to be. I think we just took on a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And then the stress of just my job, you know, I worked nights and I've got little kids, so I was always trying to be awake with them as much as possible. Just probably not taking care of myself, not sleeping like I should. Completely inconsistent, never the same days of working. And Kevin was at home all the time with the kids at that point because, you know, home. You guys were working from home and we were trying to be safe. So we kept our kids home too. And so really Kevin was working from home and keeping the kids all the time. And I don't think I realized until later how much stress that put on him. Because he was trying to let me sleep and go to, I still had a full-time job that I had to go to all the time and I had to sleep. And so we were just going through a lot, as was, you know, a lot of people this year. But, and even just the stress of, I think, all the other stuff that happened this year, aside from the pandemic, just the, like the racism stuff, the injustice, and just the things that you see on the news and social media. It just makes you look at yourself and wonder, you know, what your part is to play. And, it's just stressful. It's stressful to feel that pressure and want to say the right thing and want to be on the right side of things and just feel like maybe there's no right answer in the eyes of people. And that was a lot of pressure. And there got to be a point, I think it was probably July, I want to say. That was when it got really, really bad for me. And just the anxiety. I was having panic attacks all the time. I mean, it was a nightly occurrence.
Had that been something that happened through your life? Or did
every
that happen
now
for the
and
first
then.
Time? Okay.
Every now and then, but it was getting out of hand for sure. It was something I felt like happened every now and then, but Kevin was pretty good at talking me through it, and I feel like, you know, we would get past it and just push it to the side.
And there'd be clear indicators like, oh, here's, you know, we're low on money, or we're low on sleep, or the kids, you know, when you have a newborn baby and everything's just kind of all over the place, or there would be clear indicators.
Your way out of it.
Right. That happens once a month, but we can really tell when this is going on. And then it got to the point where it was every week. And then it got to the point where it was every night. And then it got to the point where it was multiple times a day. Where, you know, and I won't step on your toes.
No,
your story, but
so it was getting out of control, and I just felt it weighing on me too much. I felt like I couldn't concentrate anymore. I just couldn't live. I couldn't enjoy anything anymore. I feel like I couldn't think straight. That's what I always say that. I just can't think straight. And, you know, so that just kept getting worse and worse. And there got to be a point that had been something I'd been really good at hiding. I mean, my whole life, I don't tell friends or, you know, I think my family knew a little bit as far as my parents and my sisters, but even them, I never talked openly to them about that either.
Why do you think that you didn't talk to people about it?
I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's funny being someone who has struggled with that for so long. I have been someone in the past who has been like, we need to get over it. Like it's mental health is so over talked about, over medicated. And I've been that person. And so that was a really hard thing for me to get to the point that I'm like, this thing that I have personally not given a lot of attention to and been skeptical of, it's my problem. And I've got that problem that I've been skeptical of. And just, you know, you don't want to admit that to people, and they're just, it's not something that I think people would look at me and assume that I struggle with. And I don't know, it's a huge weakness and a vulnerability that is difficult to share. So
do you feel like, so it goes from the occasional to COVID hits, all the stress. I think it's so interesting you talk about, because a lot of times we don't think about all the things going on in the world and how that puts a pressure on you. Puts a pressure on you interpersonally. I'm curious. I feel like everybody's probably had those moments where it even affects your relationships.
For sure.
And then it affects your mental headspace of you feel guilty of what you say, don't say. And there's just, so you have that, you have the kids, you have the stress of just life.
Right.
And then you start getting into that almost where you said it was almost nightly.
Yeah. And there was and I was really, my job, I was having a hard time with, not necessarily because of the job. I just think because of where I was at, it was really hard for me to do such a high stress job. And to be up all night I wasn't in a very good mental space to handle that. And so there was a time that I remember Kevin telling me, like, maybe it's time to walk away from and I didn't have anything else lined up. So that was a scary thought, that I was getting to the point that I didn't know if I could keep working because I was, in such a bad headspace. Wow. And my husband was telling me to quit my job, and I didn't have any other options at the moment. But that's kind of where it got to be.
And I think that husbands even listening, I was in a spot where me and you have both contributed to the complete and total stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Pray it away.
Yeah.
Don't be so quick to medication. I have absolutely been skeptical about counseling and therapy.
Or we've all got problems.
We've all got problems. And it's
just life.
And looking back, it's laughable.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the season we're in, but as a husband, and that was the first experience I had ever really had. You see this person who you love more than anything. It's like, man, and I only say this because I think it paints a picture for people, and you shared this at the worship night.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it multiple times, is that you'd be in the corner of the kitchen unable to move, looking off in the corner you were crying, but it wasn't like you were bawling. There was just a despondence and tears rolling down your face, to where I was like, there was nothing. I mean, to the place where it's like, we got to put everything on hold.
Yeah.
Quit your job. We'll sell whatever we need to sell.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever we need to do. Whatever needs to happen, it's time to go all in. And I remember you and me having that conversation about your mental health, that kind of broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And so, and at the end of the day, I think it was God really that orchestrated all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I shared at the worship night too. It was funny because at the beginning of 2020, during our 21-day fast, I actually prayed that God would help me defeat depression and anxiety that year. That was my big prayer. At the beginning of
2020.
Yeah,
before
beginning
all
of
the
2020.
Pandemic stuff.
Yep, before we knew about the pandemic, before it got really bad. It was just something I always knew I struggled with, and I would really like to put it behind me this year. And it's funny looking back. I mean, it got so bad, and in the middle of it, I was not thankful, of course, not thankful at all. But looking back, I think God knew just how much pride I had in holding on to that and not sharing it with anyone and trying to figure it out on my own. And he brought me to a breaking point, that it was too much for me to carry. It was too much for me to hide. And he knew that that's what it was going to take for me to get the help that I needed. And so... it was a night that I ended up having a panic attack in front of my family, in front of my parents and in front of my sisters.
Yeah. You guys are all very close and always have been.
Yeah.
And so you hiding it from them is pretty
it's a
impressive.
big deal. Yeah.
There's this story I love in scripture where Jesus encounters someone with a really dramatic physical challenge, and he asks them this question that sounds almost insulting, and it sounds really simple. He says, "Do you want to be well?"
Yeah.
And when you read that, you're like,
why?
Well, of course. Why would you ask that?
Right.
But I don't know. That's what I think about when I hear you talking, because I think we all have areas in our lives where staying where we're at is a little bit more comfortable than the pain of what it would take to be honest and to get well. There's this quote by Kristen Kane where she says, the extent to which you're willing to embrace the pain of recovery will be the extent to which you experience healing.
Wow.
And it seems like, I just think what you said is so, how often is that the moment sometimes when you pray about something, it gets worse before it gets better?
Yeah.
And I think for all of us, 2020 and this whole past year has been a revealer of those things we've tried to stuff for a while, or we've tried to suppress for a while, we've tried to minimize for a while. But for you, it seems like that was the breaking point when it became nightly. What was the moment that you were like, okay, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
I've got to take a step.
It was that night that I kind of broke down in front of my family. It's funny because it was something I've been hiding for years, and that I said this at the worship night, but the moment that I unintentionally allowed other people into my struggle is the moment that God began like a healing work in me.
I remember driving home. I was at a friend's house or something.
Oh yeah, Kevin wasn't even there that night.
Yeah, I
think I was with my family alone.
You were with your family. And your mom calls me, just all imagine finding this out about your daughter, who you
just didn't realize.
So she calls me, did you know any of this? I'm like, this has been that one doesn't even sound that bad. You know?
Yeah.
And so it just speaks to the extent of the hiding and the extent of,
Yeah.
you know, and I think a lot of people could probably resonate with your personality type, which is you just, in the heightened atmosphere that we find ourselves in, you don't want to like put pressure on people it feels like when you are opening up and asking for help that you are putting unnecessary stress on the people that love you most.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be farthest from the truth.
Right.
And that if people love you, gosh, there's nothing more gratifying than you letting them into your story, that you are not putting. I remember me and your mom talking about this, like why haven't you asked for help? She'd ask me, and I'm like, I don't know. I guess we don't do it
We've
intentionally.
just been in this
but-
closed bubble and hiding for years.
It's survival, you know. It's close it down, shut it down.
Yeah.
But I think that so oftentimes, it's hard to do mental health by yourself.
It
It's
really is.
It's hard to heal by yourself.
Well, and not to spend a whole lot of time here, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about the Enneagram. You're an Enneagram 9.
Yeah.
I'm curious if that played into
I'm short.
any of your hesitancy or how you
I'm
processed
sure.
any of this, or
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm still learning a lot about myself. I feel like there's so much to learn about ourselves. I think self-awareness is really healthy. It's something really good to dig into.
and for those that are just watching that are still learning about 9s,
Yeah.
what is the basic template of a 9?
They're called the peacemakers. And it's funny, since I've been on this journey of healing, I see a counselor now, and we've talked a lot about that and, maybe where that came from. But I don't like conflict. It is maybe my worst fear. And I don't want to be the person ever to make somebody uncomfortable, to make somebody worry. Don't like to be the center of attention.
So this moment's a nightmare.
Drama, you know what I mean? Those are all things that run through my mind. Yes, this is this is not what I want. This is not who I want to be. This is not the kind of environment I want to create. Just none of it. Yeah.
I think from my perspective, being someone who loves conflict, and I'll work out my feelings and disagreements with people. Andrea has this inner garbage disposal that you can tell when she has a thought that would be a conflict in a conversation, or she would put unnecessary stress on somebody. She would much rather just get rid of it internally than ever let it out. And I think that, like you said, that moment with your family was the antithesis of anything you've ever tried to create.
It was like, here's all my.
I couldn't get rid of that myself.
So for anybody watching that just needs some maybe free marital counseling, I know we're going to continue on the talk of depression, but curious, 8 to 9.
8 and 9. We really couldn't be more different.
So different, but then also like enjoying conflict. Avoiding conflict.
Yeah.
How do you two approach and bridge the gap there in communication and the way that you work through issues? And
yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because I think this is part of this problem that I've had is that I've chosen Kevin as my safe place. And
is that a thing of 9s?
I don't know if it is, but it's like, I think, for the rest of the world, everyone else I love, everyone else I come in contact with, I'm trying to protect them, care, only about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what the environment looks like for them. And that's all. But with him, I think I feel safe to be honest and to have hard conversations. But I almost feel like I've put this load on him that wasn't his to carry. We're here for each other. That's what you do in marriage. But there's a point that you can't expect your spouse to be everything for you or the only person involved in your life, and even more so than God.
Right.
Putting things on him that were meant for like my Father in heaven to carry, or for me to be able to talk to my mom about, or for me to talk to a counselor about, or ask a doctor about, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spread the love a little bit.
I once heard this analogy. I don't know if this is true, but I heard someone teach non-marriage one time, and they said, from a faith perspective, that while you serve each other, the best relationship is where you want each other more than you need each other, and that it's kind of like that a lot of marriages, I mean, really any of us, but a lot of marriages, it's like you're underwater sharing an oxygen tank. that if you're not really drawing most of your source from Jesus, you're sharing an oxygen tank, and you end up fighting because you both need the oxygen that each other has, and then you both end up frustrating each other.
I think that had so much to do just with our battle this year together, like mental health wise, is that both of us, we were not asking for help. We weren't letting anyone in. We were choosing only each other as safe places, and we just needed help. And so I, for one, I think have been putting, and this is not according to Kevin. I mean, this is my own observations, but he's been wonderful about walking me through all of this. But I feel like I put so much pressure on him to be the one to pull me out of this every day, that he's ignored his own mental health for years for me, because there was no other option. There was no room for both of us to be struggling. There was barely room for all of my struggle, to be honest. And so I just say that as an encouragement that, we're just not meant to do this alone, and you're not meant to put all of this on one person. Can't fix it for you. It's a community effort, and I have felt so ashamed and so guilty for hiding when I was in hiding and not telling anyone. I feel like the devil can convince you of his lies so easily when you don't hear anyone else's voice.
Wow.
It's just so easy to believe him. It's so easy to believe that you're worthless and that you're hopeless and it's never going to get better, and that you should be ashamed of the mom that you are, and you should be ashamed of the wife that you are. And, it's easy to believe that when there's no other voices in your life. But when you let other people in, I've never felt less ashamed. Like, there's no way a year ago I would want to get on a podcast and share these struggles that I've had, but I don't feel ashamed anymore. I really don't. I feel so encouraged and so full of hope, and I feel like if there's anyone that wants to talk about this, like, sure, I'd be happy to tell you all about my story if it makes you feel like you want to get some help.
Well, I bet anyone watching or listening right now feels what I feel, which is the weight of your words. You can feel it. Like, you can feel what God is doing in your life, and the hope and the fullness. And can you even walk us through what led to you share, because Wednesday was when we had the worship night. It was the first time you shared that publicly. And I just think it was really cool. I just think this may sound really cheesy to somebody that's not from a faith perspective. It's such a God thing.
Oh my gosh, it was. And I didn't, of course I don't have time to share all of that on that one night, but that was a huge part of it too. It's funny that, during the fast of 2020, I prayed for God to take depression and anxiety from me, and it looked a lot different than I thought, and it was a lot harder than I thought. But he did that because eventually, in the fall of 2020, I went to a doctor. I started taking medication. I've been seeing a counselor, and I'm definitely on a journey to healing. But it's funny because during the fast of 2021, I'm looking back and just in awe of that he did that and the way that he did it. And it was one of your messages, Pastor Russ, that you preached at the very beginning of the year. And I couldn't tell you exactly what you said, but there was something about you were talking about.
But was it really good?
It was so good.
Okay,
it was so good. It was something like you knowing that you were called to ministry, and someone in your life asked you, well, like, have you asked? Have you asked about that? And you're like, oh no, like I would never put pressure on, these leaders at the church. And that's so me. Like, I'm not going to put pressure on anyone or ask anyone to let me do something. Like, I'm just not going to cause that discomfort. Enneagram 9.
Enneagram 9.
But, they told you what you said on stage is that no, he was like, no, I was talking about, have you asked God? And you're like, well, God knows my heart. Like God knows, and if he wants something, he's going to make it happen in my life. But just that God wants us to ask, and he wants us to have that relationship with him, that we're not just like, oh, God knows what I want. He knows what he wants. What's the point of relationship if we're not communicating? That God wants our hearts, and he wants that closeness with us. And something I was terrified even to tell Kevin is that I was praying during this fast for an opportunity to speak and just share what God had done in my life, which is not really me. That's really, and I was really a very patient prayer, like, God, whenever, even if it's years down the road, no hurry. And I wanted to tell Kevin what I was praying for. And I almost considered leaving that one out because I didn't even want to share that with him. That was super, super personal to me, not something I wanted to share with anyone. But I did. I let him know. But he didn't tell anyone. He keeps my secrets pretty well for me. So it's funny. So after you did that message, I decided, like, I'm going to pray and I'm going to ask God for an opportunity to share. And I'm just going to see what he does with that. I'm just going to ask because I feel like he wants me to ask. And it was at the end of your message that on the screen we have like the share your story on, I don't know, what is it? If you want to tell people, I don't know.
Stories at the X.Church.
Yeah, if you want to share your story, there it is. And I've known that. I've been here for forever, and I felt like God was nudging me to, like, share your story. Like, there it is right there on the screen. But then there's a little bit of insecurity in me, like, you know, my husband works here. Everybody already knows my story. It'd be silly for me to send an email in to all these people that I could very easily just talk to. But it lasted a couple of days, that nudging. I feel like when God wants you to do something, he doesn't leave you alone, and you just know it. So I finally did it. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell Kevin. I just wrote in my story. I clicked submit, and I'm like, there you go, God. I did it. Do what you want with that. Yeah. And it's funny because you reached out to me about, Pastor Russ, about sharing my story at worship night, when I just thought it was the craziest thing that, first of all, that God would answer that prayer so quickly, but also that he would use you to encourage me, you know, through your message. Well, and then you completely unknowingly asking me to be the one to share.
This was crazy. So I get this text message from Andrea at the beginning of the fast. We kicked off the whole thing. I think you did the first message of our Move series, and yeah, that message is online if you want to go back for YouTube.
Yes, go watch it. It might encourage you.
Yeah. and so she sends me this list of 6 things, and I'm reading. I'm like, that's awesome. You know, I'll pray with you. And we're all a part of these planning meetings, and I'm not like, I saw your story come in too. I get those emails, we all do, and I obviously just respectful of it, and I'm just kind of outside of all of it, and we're planning this worship night that for the Move series, and I know Andrea's prayer requests, and it was Russ's idea. I just think it'd be awesome if Andrea would share her story and she'd share her testimony at this night. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. In my head. Like, and God, it was like, that was like a 2-day prayer. That's awesome. And so just to see God orchestrate that was really cool on my end. Just
so
to see,
cool.
You know.
I just think it's worth highlighting that for a couple reasons. One, because all those little but big moments are the kind of things when you begin to follow Jesus that just remind you how real God is.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
A. B, there's this verse in the last book of the Bible that talks about we overcome by what Jesus did for us and by our testimony.
Yeah.
That there's something that people can argue all they want with your faith. What people can't argue with is a story. And your story just... I'm not exaggerating. You felt the power of it that Wednesday night. You feel the power of it now because it's real. And so I just think it's worth just maybe anybody watching that maybe you've been hesitant to tell your story to take a step, because I think the lie that we all believe, I once heard somebody say the most powerful 2 words that anybody can ever say to another human being is me too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I just think for everyone that thinks they're alone in their struggle, that your struggle is unique, or that your story is unique. Like, no, the world needs your story, or the world and the people in your world need you to talk about what's really going on in your world. There's this verse in James that says, confess your sins, or you could just sub that with struggles to one another, that you may be healed. Somebody once told me, they said, you know, Russ, you talk to God about your struggles for forgiveness, but you talk to other humans for healing.
Oh gosh, yeah,
and that a lot of times we're asking God to heal me when God most likely wants to heal me through you.
You're right.
Yeah,
through you.
And that's a big thing that I feel like I've learned this year is that, you know, I feel like I've got a calling, and God's called me to things, and he's made me with a purpose for, you know, whatever it is. And who am I to say that the doctors who have medication and they have this knowledge and passion for learning about how it helps my brain, or counselors who have this passion in their heart for people like me, or for all kinds of other struggles. But who am I to say that God didn't make them for that reason?
Yeah.
And I feel like I am pushing away the purpose that God has put in people if I say I don't need you.
Wow.
When that's what God made them for. And
Yeah.
so that's something that has been super eye-opening for me this year, is believing that just like I hope that God made me with a purpose and a calling, that why would I not want to allow everyone else to work out in their gifts and their calling? And if it benefits me in my life because God wants to love me through that, then I am more than happy to let them.
Yeah, I remember a time, probably at the end of the year, obviously we've been going through pandemic, all these struggles as a society, as a nation, as a country, as a world. And at the end of a church service, I think it was you who got up and you just felt like give the opportunity for people in the crowd. And we'll do this every once in a while in our experiences. Just raise your hand if you need prayer for this or for this. And you'll get 10, 15 hands in a room, if something really resonates.
Right.
But you got up and you said at the end of a message, just closing out an experience, I just feel like, and you said it real quick, you said, I feel like there's people in here who are at the end of your rope with anxiety and depression and you need help. That's you. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. And I'm not kidding you. It was the most overwhelming sight I've ever had in my life. I'm sitting here looking at this room, probably at least 45, 50% of this room, hands shot up. Every age group, every race, every type of person, every gender, people I'd known for a long time, people I'd never known before, people crying the second you asked it. Yeah. And so, man, to think that God would put inside of you and people listening that there is like you said, a testimony that the devil will tell you it means nothing.
Right.
Right. That your story means nothing. It's going to end in despair. Why would you even try?
Yeah.
But the story of Jesus in your life is, no, he can redeem things. He brings beauty and ashes, and it's in the dark place. It's in the moments in the pit where God wants to lift you out.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I feel like God gave me and God gave us a visual of, no, here are the people that we need to fight for ourselves, and we need to do the work so that we can share a testimony of Jesus and healing and hope.
Yeah.
Because
and just loving each other. Like, that's what all he called to do is, love me with all your heart and soul and mind, and love each other like you know what I mean? Like that's what loving Jesus is all about.
So
but what a message,
this is such a cool way to do that.
What a message, because you think about the message of the world, which is, we're all just kind of here. We evolved from we're pretty much technically Martians. We evolved from this bacteria, and when this world's over, we're just kind of going to return, and life is purposeless, and just treat each other kindly and do what makes you happy. Yeah. And I think we all have recognized that the search for meaning in life. I was listening to a podcast with Elon Musk. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and this guy, one of the smartest guys, the human intellect, just incredible. And they're talking about traveling to Mars and colonizing on Mars and interstellar travel. And Joe Rogan asked him, well, why are you doing all this? And he goes, really, because we all want to understand the meaning of life. Yeah. Elon Musk said that. Yeah. And talk about one of the smartest people on the planet Earth, one of the smartest humans, and he's still on this quest to discover what's the meaning of life. And if you haven't asked that question over the past almost 12 months now, since we started shutting things down, then you might want to check your pulse. Yeah. And to go, man, what we've experienced through the dark seasons is the eternal hope, and like this hope that that comes not just in this life, but it's for a better one and for a perfect one, that God loves you enough not to leave you where you are, but to take you to a new place of healing and hope and joy and fulfillment and life to the fullest and all sorts of things like that.
So good. It's so good. I think, and maybe that's one of the silver linings of this past year, is that people are realizing maybe in a painful way at times, but in an important way, that craving in them for meaning. Viktor Frankel, he's this famous psychologist that was a World War II Holocaust survivor, and he thought he was going to die any moment in concentration camps, but he became famous for whispering in he got in trouble for whispering in people's ears that were about to kill themselves, that you have a purpose, you have a meaning. And so from his psychology is actually where Donald Miller has Story Brand, all these things. But he has this quote where he says, when man doesn't have a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure.
Wow.
And I wonder if 2020 people weren't able to distract themselves with pleasure.
Yeah.
Right. So all of a sudden there's just like, oh, wow, my life needs to count for something.
Yeah. That's
and that's one of the things that just occasionally we love to say in this podcast. So we hope that you know that you have a purpose, no matter where you're at in your faith journey, what you believe. And you go to the doctor. You start taking medicine. Yeah. And I know we all love to imagine that on this side of eternity, things always wrap up with a nice tiny bow and ribbon. And I imagine it's not like that. But can you walk us through where you're at now? Yeah. And what that's, how's medicine helped and doctors helped? And
so like I said that night, I know everyone has a next step. And I think everyone's next step is to share with somebody, let somebody in, let another voice in apart from the enemy that can be an encouragement to you. I think that's a next step for anyone and everyone. I think God's really good at, I don't think God ever means for us to be confused and, searching for so long. I think that God will lead you in the right direction once you open up and start sharing. But it was pretty obvious to me that I needed the help from a doctor and a counselor. And so I got some medication that I started taking. It took a few weeks to work, but I just started noticing small things, like noticing that it was easier to smile at my kids. Wow. Noticing that, when they were asking me if I could get them a drink, that I just got up and did it instead of like sitting there for 20 minutes not wanting to get off the couch and get my little kids a drink who can't do it by themselves. Yeah. I remember like laughing one time and I was like, gosh, I don't remember the last time that I laughed just like that, or I had a desire to cook dinner one night. And I'm like, gosh, Kevin, how long has it been since I wanted to cook dinner for any of us? Just small desires that I didn't realize how long I had no desires other than to just survive and get by. Yeah.
Not even add, I think that you hear a lot of people who've had horror stories with medication of mental health things. And I think we never want to give people this blind optimism, just go and get some sort of medicine, everything will be better. You need to find a doctor you trust and surround yourself. It's part of the support system you need to open up to and build, but find a doctor you love and trust. Talk to other people. Talk to us. Send an email into us. We'll help you find somebody, something that we've had success with, but
because there are scenarios that people, you can go to the doctor and they won't even listen to you and they'll prescribe you something and here you go, be on your way. I mean, you got to figure out who you can trust and feel heard and listen to and feel like it's someone who, if it's not working, that you can come to them and tell them it's not working. And so everyone's story is not going to be just really smooth and, there's a medication that's going to fix all your problems. That's not it. But just being willing to go on that journey, if that's what your next step is, and finding the right person to help you do that. For me, it's changed my life. Wow. And, I see a counselor every 2 weeks now. She's wonderful. She's, she's a Christian. She's an older lady. She's struggled with things that I've struggled with and been to counseling herself, and just the way that she's helped me have grace for myself has been life-changing. Yeah. I mean, there was times I've told Kevin in the past when I was really struggling that I felt like I hated myself because I hated the struggle. I hated what it did to him. I hated the way that I looked to our kids. I hated how it made me feel in my life and what it was robbing me of. And I hated that I wasn't strong enough to get rid of it on my own. And I would say a lot of times I feel like I hate myself. Right. And walking through this with a counselor and even there's just freedom in her telling me like, no, you've actually got a problem. And that's funny that you would think that would be freeing, but it is, to stop blaming yourself and to believe somebody that you've got something that you needed help with. And to look at myself and have grace for myself and just be really thankful for the healing. And to not hold myself so responsible for my struggles and to know that God wants more for me has been the most freeing thing. And that's, I mean, I still have bad days and hard times, but that's mostly where I am right now. Is I've got a lot more grace for myself and a lot of hope, and I'm not hiding in the dark, letting the enemy just speak all these lies over me anymore.
I love that. It's so beautiful. And I've always been told that in the dark is where the enemy does his best work.
Absolutely.
And so shining a light on that. And so thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Yeah. And as we close, I just think this weekend we're going to be talking about Elijah. Elijah's one of my heroes. He's like this rock star prophet from the Old Testament. He's the first. The story of Elijah is the first story I heard that made me think as a kid, maybe the Bible's not boring. He has these like just hardcore showdowns with false prophets on mountains and calling down fire, and he's just like this bold, like sarcastic, ill-mannered prophet that just takes on the world. But what we won't be able to talk about for time's sake on Sunday is a couple chapters after that, he's asking God to take his life because he's so depressed.
Wow.
And, I think especially in the Christian world, like you said, it's not, a knee-jerk reaction, I'm going to get medicine. But it is an understanding that in our humanity, depression is just makes us human, not weak.
Right.
And that it doesn't matter how strong you are, to go through seasons of anxiety and depression is not a sign of anything you should be ashamed of or scared to talk about. And I also love the fact
you're bad at prayer.
No.
Doesn't mean you lack faith.
No. In fact, when Elijah finally came down off this, because there's a lot of times, I just peek into my world, my worst days are the day after I preach.
Right.
When the adrenaline's come down and I've poured out and I've been on the mountaintop, or whatever it's like, and then the next day when I'm alone with myself. And Elijah had that, and everybody needs to know their own triggers. But in what most people would have said, man, bro, you just had the greatest victory ever. Elijah said, he said several things. Here's how one of the clues you're in depression is you use pervasive language. He said, no one serves you, God. And I'm just like my father. And I'm no different than them. And then he says, take my life. And I love that God didn't say, you faithless, unbelieving, you need to pray more.
Right.
What's crazy is what God actually did is he had him take a nap. And then the Bible says angels baked him bread and brought him water.
Wow.
And then after he ate and drank, he said, now take another nap.
Wow.
The way we're wired is soul, body, mind, and spirit. And usually complex issues don't have simple answers. They have holistic answers. And I just think your story, hopefully to anybody listening that may be struggling with anxiety and depression, first off, take a step and tell someone. And then second of all, pay attention not just to your body, but to your spirit, to your soul, and look at what the process looks like for you. There are probably internal, psychological, spiritual roots and maybe unbelief and wounds that need to be healed. That's probably a big part of it. But there also might be a chemical side of it. There might be a physiological side of it that God gives the grace to doctors to help you treat. And rest plays a part. Exercise, it all plays a part. We are complex beings. We're spirit, body, mind, and soul. And so I just thank you for your story. And I just think, again, what you said, hey, we're not experts, but if we can pray, point you in the right direction, send us an email at podcast@thex.church, or share with us your story that will inspire you. I also want to say this, Valentine's Day week. If you live in Central Ohio, we're doing something really special at the end of March. March 27th, we are hosting as a site an international marriage conference called EXO Marriage Conference. So if you live anywhere near Central Ohio, or even if you don't, just get buy a plane flight, a ticket, and come see us. It is worth it. The X.Church/events, would that be the best place?
The X.Church/conference, so you can go and register.
Go and register today. So if you're married, want to one day get married, or you are dating, go and be a part of that conference and take a day to just invest in your future. And but just thank you guys so much.
She's so sweet.
You're amazing.
Oh,
You're amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Made me so much better.
And I'm still not calling you a liar. I can't believe that was the first time you spoke.
I know.
I
Isn't
mean,
it
just
crazy?
confidence.
It's
It was
just
amazing.
God.
It was amazing. So
I never cried so hard in my life.
so
Oh my
cute.
goodness.
Well, to all of our ex-fam, thank you so much, as always, for being a part of these moments, these conversations, and we really do consider it a family. So share this, like, subscribe. Every single one of those means the world. And rate us and send us an email. Give us some feedback. Let us know what would be helpful for you. But until next time, we love you. See you next week.
You did it.
You did it.